This is WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM, Community Conscious Radio.
WMNF 88.5 invites you to the Save Our Soundwaves Benefit Show number 2, a volunteer-powered night of music, community, and revolution. It's all going down Thursday, March 19th at Crowbar in Ybor City. Doors open at 8 p.m. We've got a stacked lineup representing the local music scene: Liquid Pennies, Cozy in the Black, Lobster's Euro Shack, and Sorry Barb. Guest DJs will keep the party moving all night long. Tickets are just $12 in advance, $15 at the door, and every cent goes straight to WMNF to keep community broadcasting alive and thriving. Support the artists, support the volunteers, support the music that speaks for you. Join the resistance March 19th at Crowbar. Learn more and grab your pre-sale tickets now at WMNF.org/events.
Thank you for tuning in to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. You're tuned now to Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili. Of course, this is my opportunity to speak with you. The United States and the Israeli war on Iran is entering its third week. Oil prices are swinging wildly, sending gas prices up at the pump. Iran keeps the Straits of Hormuz choked off, while Saudi Arabia offers another route. And analysts warn about our dependence on fossil fuels, ramping up calls for renewable energy. And have you heard of plug-in solar panels? And in Florida, the Make America White Again culture war continues as voters will find it harder to vote in some cases, and the Attorney General threatens to remove the mayor of Tampa from office over ICE. This is Community Speaks, an opportunity to talk to you. You can call me 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663. And Sage stands ready to take your calls if you have something to offer on these subjects and how it's all impacting you. The global disorder, of course, is what's on a lot of people's minds. As oil prices are down today, it's a reprieve, for now at least, after oil prices spiked from roughly $70 before the United States and Israel began their attacks on Iran. And in response, Iran has effectively halted traffic through the narrow Straits of Hormuz, where a fifth of the world's oil typically sails from the Persian Gulf to customers worldwide. And that has oil producers cutting production because their crude has nowhere to go. And Saudi Arabia, as I said, has moved to pitch another option to its long-term oil buyers. The kingdom is offering long-term buyers the choice to receive their April crude shipments through its Red Sea port of Yanbu amid ongoing disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. And traders familiar with the plan said customers opting for Yanbu will get only part of their monthly allocation because the pipeline feeding the port cannot carry full volumes. So that's not really an option, a real option. And it's only a short-term option. The worry in financial markets is that if Hormuz remains closed for a long time, it could keep enough oil off the market to drive inflation up to a debilitating level for the global economy. So while POTUS is demanding other countries help wage war on Iran, but those countries see that this was a war of choice by the United States, and they don't want to come under needless attack if they get involved. And policing Hormuz is different now from past wars in that drones have joined mines, making it less likely countries will even try to pass through Hormuz. And European countries, meanwhile, they demanded to know more about POTUS's plans for the war on Iran and when that conflict might end as they weigh his demand on them. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he defended his decision to differ with POTUS. Starmer has defended resisting POTUS's pressure for the United Kingdom to join the war against Iran, saying he has stood by his principles. And Starmer said at a news conference today that British troops should only be sent into action that is legal and has a proper thought-through plan, which the whole world can see that it wasn't. And Starmer goes on to say that UK opposition politicians who criticized his stance would have rushed the UK headlong into this war without the full picture of what they're seeing our forces are, they're sending the forces into, and without a plan to get us out. So this is not leading, he says, it's following. And Israel continues to commit acts of violence as it has become, in my opinion, addicted to warfare in the region. Israeli strikes have deepened Lebanon's humanitarian crisis with more than 850 people killed and over 850,000 people displaced. So we could talk about that and this impact on the economy going forward. And there's some news about alternative energy production that we could talk about as well. But getting a little bit closer to home here, Tampa is under political threat as some other municipalities and localities have come under threat from the state governor and through his attorney general. So the question I have for you is, what would you do if the state removes Tampa Mayor Jane Castor from office? Would we resist? Because Florida Attorney General James Upmeyer is now threatening to remove Tampa Mayor from office over an immigration dispute. And as she was speaking during the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual meeting in Tampa over the summer, she said, Castor said, because, you know, she served as Tampa's chief of police from 2009 to 2015. She said the collaboration between local police and local neighborhoods was built on a foundation of trust. Crime rises when that trust is eroded. And because when some immigrant populations become victims of crime, they aren't comfortable reporting that crime because they don't trust law enforcement. And Tampa does have what is known as a 287G agreement with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE. And that agreement delegates immigration powers to state and local law enforcement. Florida law requires all counties to have a 287G agreement with ICE, but not municipalities. So the counties, not the cities. But apparently the AG believes this is sanctuary policy and does not scare the undocumented immigrants sufficiently enough. So he's saying that Tampa's mayor should come under threat of removal from office if she doesn't comply with a 287G agreement, which I said is usually something signed by counties with the state. But the Attorney General has threatened other cities into signing, especially in Orange County, Florida, when the entire commission was threatened with removal from office. That threat is nothing short of extreme duress. And so they were forced to go ahead and sign it. We could talk more about that, and I just want to direct your attention to the Florida Phoenix because our own Mitch Perry has written extensively about that particular subject, and it'd be interesting to go and see how many localities were itemized in that process. But this is not a good look given what we are seeing happening in the culture wars throughout the state, throughout red states, and how blue cities are coming under attack politically and people being threatened with removal from office. This is totally an undemocratic threat, and not just small d democratic, but democratic as in not in keeping with democracy. People elected people, and that should be, you should have to work with people, not threaten them just because you can't have your way. So this is going to be an interesting season to watch politically. But given the fact that this session in Florida legislative session has ended, and believe it or not, this is Ron DeSantis is the governor's last legislative session as governor. There could be there's already been some calls for special sessions to deal with some of these other issues, but very little got done. I think maybe they said a third of the bills that were filed in the legislation only got a hearing and got passed. And we can talk about what did get passed, but we know that there's been threats to not only immigrants, threats to people's position in office, as well as threats to voters. As we know, that the end of this legislative session is going to be a little bit harder for people to vote. It's as if they're trying to put up special impediments, special petitions to keep people, make it harder or discourage people from voting, and even scare people, which is another tactic of the right wing in this state and in this country. Is these at the root of these policies is fear, and the idea is to not only keep immigrants fearful, but voters fearful, not knowing whether or not they even have the right to vote. And here in 2026, it's a shame that people feel like their votes, they don't have the right to vote. And we went through an entire civil rights movement to make certain that these rights are protected. And what we're seeing is just threats to people's right to vote. And there's an agenda behind all of that because these policies, these red policies, are not defendable oftentimes. And so it is important for us to keep abreast of what is happening in your name. So these are some of the issues that I'm putting out on the table. And of course, we're watching some other issues. There are about 3,800 voters, workers that have gone on strike in meat packing plants across the country. What are the implications there? We could talk more about that, but especially about the politics here closer to home and on the globe. So we're going to talk about what's happening. So much chaos on the globe right now. But what has made it a lot different this time are the drone wars. And so, we've seen countries try to defend the port of Hormuz in the past, especially during the Gulf War and the Iran-Iraq War. So if you were POTUS right now, you should have already known this was a possibility that the Straits of Hormuz would be shut down. And again, it just goes and shows and proves the incompetence happening at the top of this government right now. And there's no plan of action. There's just acting. And a lot of the people who are in that cabinet are wholly unqualified to be in that job. And this is what you get when you have that kind of incompetence and you have this fear-mongering going on where if they can't get their way, they just threaten people. And is threatened with their jobs, threatened with violence. And but there's never a real good plan. We're seeing this lack of real government engagement happening in red states as well as this POTUS's regime. No planning whatsoever. We've seen the debacle with Alligator Alcatraz, the deportation depot, those two lockups for those people who are undocumented. And they say that Florida is finally eligible over last week, $608 million in federal grants to help pay for the migrant lockups after POTUS's administration lifted an environmental funding hold that had stalled the dollars for months. And so state emergency managers still can't request the FEMA money until the federal government shutdown ends. And I think maybe we've all forgotten that the government is shut down right now over ICE funding, and those tactics, those police tactics in blue cities is under real consideration right now in that process. But again, that funding that was supposed to go towards this speedy building of these deportation centers, these concentration camps, there was no planning for that, and they was hoping to get this grant, but politics kept that on hold. We can talk more about that, but this whole 2026 session has been deemed an embarrassment because of what it didn't get done and the continued threats to other office holders in this state, the threats against so-called sanctuary cities. Nobody has been able to explain what is the rhyme and reason behind these threats to elected officials in this state, or even what a sanctuary city is. And like I said, if there was if you're a mayor, especially after this particular mayor has been a police officer before, knows the importance of community engagement and trust in a community. And we all know that some people who are immigrants in this country, you can't just look at a person and tell whether or not they're documented or undocumented, but they often come under threat when people know that, because they are hardworking, they know that they get paid on Friday, they could get attacked on Friday for that pay. But those crimes get reported, oftentimes not, because they feel like the police are just as much of a threat. But we can talk about all of that in this legislative session, the fact that there is a need for pushback to this kind of threat engagement that we see in red states, especially in this state, and how in the process nothing is getting done. We see that the governor has called some of the passages of law as wins, that the state level so-called SAVE Act, which I said is really just designed to make people fearful to even vote. And we're seeing the state try to mimic a lot of what the politics they're seeing out of their party at the national level. And this is one of them, this so-called Florida SAVE Act, and where voters would be required to provide proof of citizenship. Just an extra added level. There's been no real proof that people who are not citizens are actually going into the voting booth and voting. It's been such a minuscule number. It was not even worth this kind of legislation, and stuff that needs to be taken into serious consideration are being ignored, which is why this session is being considered one of the most embarrassing sessions of all time. And like I said, we still didn't deal with the vaccine, the measles outbreak that is continuing to rise. That was supposed to be a vaccine policy that the governor wanted to have passed, and I guess he got sort of victory on that before his term in office ends. But what that will do, nobody really knows, except that fewer people are going to get vaccinated, and especially with this measles outbreak, it's based on a lot of ideology. And so we're going to have to keep abreast on all of this chaos and make sense out of it. 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663. This is Community Speaks, and I do want to hear from you. You can also write me, dj@wmnf.org, dj@wmnf.org, and we can talk about all of these issues going forward, but I want to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to go to talk with Joe in Venice, Florida. Thank you for calling, Joe, to Community Speaks. You wanted to talk about POTUS. You say what?
Hi there. Thank you for the program. I would like to talk about Trump does have an agenda. And I believe, in my opinion, his agenda is to create so much chaos. First, it keeps the Epstein files on the back burner, but you create so much chaos that you declare martial law and cancel the next election. Everybody stays in power. He maintains the Congress. There you go. I think that's his goal.
Yeah, that's probably his fevered dream, even though I can't see how he can accomplish that.
Well, once the people get in the street and get mad enough, he can declare martial law. And that's what I believe, the chaos. He'll just keep piling it up till people can't take it anymore. And there'll either be some protesters that do something wrong, or they will stage it themselves and say it was the protesters and it's wrong, and declare martial law, no election. That's right.
Yeah. I understand that's probably the simplistic thinking that they are thinking about. But as they saw in Minneapolis, that it didn't work out that way. People got out into the streets and protested, but it was nonviolent, and they couldn't do anything to really ramp up the violence, and they ended up on the wrong side of the public opinion in Minnesota.
If they can't get the protesters to do something violent, they'll stage it themselves. They'll have somebody go in and do it as a protester that isn't. And,
Yeah, we'll see right through it.
There is a plan.
Yeah, I understand the chaos plan. Yeah, that's the chaos plan.
That's the chaos plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
That's all. Okay, bye.
Bye now. 813-239-9663. What are we going to do about the chaos plan? Of course, as I said, states are engaging in the same kind of pressure and duress when it comes to the culture wars, especially when it comes to immigration. And what we're seeing is this anti-democratic effort to remove people from office. And we know that there's a penchant for doing that. And we saw the Hillsborough County Attorney General and the Orange County Attorney General removed from office as part of this governor's career process in this state. And so we know that that is real. And as I said, it's really just duress to get these counties to sign these agreements that they have to sign with ICE. And like I said, it was supposedly counties, not municipalities, that are to sign these agreements. County sheriffs are the ones that are working closely with ICE. But here again, there's an attempt to politicize and the issue by going after blue cities. And I knew Tampa will eventually come under attack from this red state governor. 813-239-9663. Let's go to Orlando and talk to Remy. Thank you for calling.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for taking the call. Just a quick follow-up. I'm not going to be all day on the previous caller about Trump, his desire for chaos in a third term or perpetually keeping the Republican majority in office, or at least himself. I don't think he wants chaos, but I think the people that are controlling him have their reasons for chaos, and they know they got him by the something, and he's just having to go through, but he's not a moral guy. So, I mean, saying that he wants it or saying that he's doing it because other people are forcing him to do it, it's the same moral, complete failure. But on a third term, people try to roll their eyes when you talk about Trump wanting a third term, but guess what? As you may have heard, a few months ago, he said right in front of, some room in the White House, he said Miriam Adelson told him that he'll go for a third term. She'll give him $200 and some million, and that she had been working with Alan Dershowitz, who's all over the Epstein files, and that Alan Dershowitz had told Miriam Adelson that he thinks he's found a legal way that's a path for Trump to have that third term. So for people that are trying to say that's not a thing, it's a thing. So y'all have a good afternoon.
Okay. You too, Remy. Thank you for that call. I know that, as I said, that is part of the fevered dream, but there's going to be a lot of maneuvering needed in order to get that done. Especially since it takes place in the states. If anything, a few states might opt to go along with that plan, but I really think that they're really putting their faith in scaring you from the polls. They know that it would be a much longer and harder process to push for a constitutional amendment to change, to give this POTUS a third term. Why he would want it, I don't know, except to maybe continue to protect himself from prosecution. But it would be a much harder thing. I think they feel it's much easier to scare you from the polls, to keep you from going, to make it impossible for you to participate, as more impossible as possible, as they possibly can make it for you to participate. They are holding on to that possibility through the SAVE Act at the state level and at the national level. And in addition to all of that, it's about keeping people out of this the process and not having many victories. We got the anti-teacher union bill that was passed. They confirmed 2 agency heads affiliated with Hope Florida, the Hope Florida Foundation scandal. So, they're just really about protecting themselves, their jobs, and intimidating the rest of us. We're going to see what they do going forward, but we're seeing a lot of useless stuff happening here in the state. They had a measure to rename the Palm Beach airport after POTUS, and naming the South Florida roadway after this right-wing zealot that was assassinated at a university. They wanted to name of South Florida roadway after that person, and they're allowing the governor to deem certain organizations as domestic terrorist groups, and they only want to have a light regulation of AI data centers, even though people are peacefully protesting, saying we don't want these data centers that's just going to raise our prices, our utility prices. So we could talk about all of that. 813-239-9663. That's the number to call. But there was also a story this week that mentioned something about a plug-in solar panel. And as we are watching the events on the globe and the threats to the global economy, not just from tariffs, but also from the violence that's purveyor that this country has purveyed in the Middle East unnecessarily. It's just a war of choice. It's causing countries to take sides. Also, decisions that are being made that clearly were not thought out. We have the POTUS saying that he wants to lift the sanctions on Russia, although the sanctions were put in place because Russia violated international law by invading another country, Ukraine. And if you lift the sanctions on Russia's oil, then you're going to fuel that war effort against Ukraine. So you're not helping the situation on the globe one bit by doing that, clearly showing this has been an incompetent administration from the beginning, and how these people have been competitive enough to keep winning elections is clearly because of the culture wars and the growing distrust in institutions in this country. And of course, these institutions have done a lot to hurt a lot of people, but it is this government is supposed to be for and by us. And so we have to really get our heads back in this game. And it is going to take people being impacted by these policies. So we talk about the voter attacks on voters. We talk about what's happened all through this legislative session. We're seeing the intimidation against elected officials, and workers are doing what they can to stand up for themselves. As I said, 3,800 workers in the nation's meatpacking plants are on strike. Beef prices have soared to record levels, in part after drought and years of low prices led to the smallest U.S. herd size in decades. So we're watching that. We know that tariffs also played a role in what has happened there. So this is Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patrick Mobili. We got halfway through the program. We're watching war break out, and as it relates to oil in that region being disrupted, prices going up or fluctuating wildly. But at the tank where you and I are impacted, if you're driving or if you're taking a bus or any of those things, those prices will begin to impact you over time. So we're watching, but this violence play itself out. What's different, and we talk about the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, is that drones are now in play, and that could really change the game. And we're going to keep watch on that. But drone wars are what's behind a lot of that. Let's take a listen to that, as we ponder some of these issues. And you call 813-239-9663.
Today's sessions, what's a square mile distance from me and other MCs with style and persistence.
As the game is changing constantly, 813-239-9663. Talking about what's happening at the national and state level, as always. Want to hear from you, 813-239-9663. 813-239-9663. Looking at all of the spending that is going on, we talk about the waste that has happened at the Pentagon. We've heard some crazy, wild numbers about all of the spending that is happening. But in this U.S. war against Iran, we're seeing some numbers. The following numbers shows estimates, breakdowns of what could be the estimated cost of the Iran war for the United States during the first week of the war. And looks like we're seeing numbers upwards of $11.3 billion already. The Pentagon provided an estimate to Congress in a briefing earlier this week, according to a person familiar with the situation who has spoke on the condition of anonymity. Of course, a lot of them are doing that now. They don't know what the reaction would be to discuss in the private news. Look at some of them, what some of the money is buying in this war. $1.40 billion, $33.12 billion. If you were to just give that money to somebody else, $33.12 billion to everyone in the United States. If you look at the number of the cost of this war, and $1.40 to everybody on Earth could be given if you add up the cost of this war. We could be producing more fighter jets and Tomahawk missiles, and it could fund a whole year of federal highway infrastructure program and more funding, 3.5 years of funding for the national state parks. That's if you add up the cost of this war. And speaking of production of Tomahawk missiles, we already know now that the first lie to emerge out of this war was the shooting of a missile into the school. It is now, I knew this last week, just wanted to make certain that we got all of the reporting on it, but Tomahawk missiles were used in the shooting at that school. Apparently they shot the school based on old data, and the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, stupidly got rid of the departments that would do the forward intelligence on civilians at any target. Those agencies that were tasked with making certain that we didn't hit a civilian target all were gutted by DOGE. So clearly, we weren't ready. There was never a plan in this war. And what we're witnessing is just simple red incompetence. 813-239-9663. 813-239-9663. I'm going to go here in Tampa and talk with Joel. Thank you for calling, Joel, to Community Speaks. You say what?
Hello, Billy.
Hey.
We got big trouble with these people in power. And they are going to go sooner or later. I hope sooner. They are going to go. And when they're gone, we're going to need critical thinking leaders, not weak-minded leaders, to start repairing the damage. I figure it'll take them 20 years to figure out what to do, and another 20 years to get to doing it. So if we're not strong and healthy people, critical-minded, strong and healthy people, we're going to be just floundering around, flip-flopping, and not making any progress. The Republicans are scared to death of their leader for retribution, either political or physical harm to themselves or their families if they don't keep in line. The Democrats, they're not going to keep us safe. Nobody's safe today, McBilly. Nobody. No matter where you are, you can be harmed in a moment. Because we got mentally ill people all over the place with weapons everywhere.
Yeah.
And for any reason at all, they'll feel like picking up their weapon and hurting themselves or somebody else.
Yeah,
we do have to win this election. I mean, getting the Democrats back in power, as feeble-minded as they are. We're going to need to win this November election. And I'm really troubled by what they're trying to do to steal it. Mm-hmm. We got people in Georgia and North Carolina that challenge voters. They say, I'm challenging this Johnson, Jackson, or Mabili. And you know what happens to their ballot? It gets thrown out. It doesn't get counted. And they can challenge thousands, hundreds of thousands of ballots that come in from the rigged voting districts that they don't like. And I don't know if there's a way to, if there is a challenge to a voter, to do it 60 days before the election. Mm-hmm. You know, and let the voter, and inform the voter of a challenge, and let the voter stand up and answer that challenge with documents or whatever. Right. It's a stinking country today, and I'm not happy about it, but I'm hopeful.
So am I, because I think that
we can get together. You know, we're a community here in Tampa,
right?
And we can get together and be strong and fight this evil and this horrible, childish behavior.
Right. And I think that their attempts at intimidating the voter is short-sighted. It is not going to work because, you know, they seem like they're desperate, and that means they're not going to really achieve what they think they're going to achieve. I think what they're hoping is just that you and I won't vote. They just think that they can intimidate people from the polls. That intimidation is their game.
And that desperation makes it more dangerous for everybody, because they're doing all kinds of dastardly things with that because of desperation and their own fear of losing power.
Right.
They're power mongers, and we got to just grab that away from them. Take their money and take their power.
Right. No matter how many millionaires support them, they still should lose.
But Billy, it's so sad that these people are falling in line behind this evil Burger King.
Yeah.
It's just sad.
Right.
And hey, Billy, we've been contributing to this downslide for 30, 40, 50 years since Reagan.
That's true.
Little decisions, one after another, giving more power to the corporations, the individuals, and it was the peanut president, Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter said the worst thing that he has seen, I'm paraphrasing, the worst thing that he has seen is that the Congress has voted that corporations are people.
Yeah, I hate that.
And they have ability to fund any campaign with unlimited resources, with unlimited funding. And we had some good presidents that wanted to do the right thing. Obama was a good president. He was a great president. He was fighting the Republicans every single day of his office. They were blocking his votes, his issues. He got things done, but he would have got a lot more done to keep us safe and to have a kind and compassionate and empathic country, and a country that cares and doesn't have a military-industrial that President Eisenhower warned us against.
Right.
Military-industrial complex is just overblown and overpowerful.
Right.
Yeah, there's so many broken parts to this country. Man, we got to get healthy, and we got to start rebuilding it.
We're working on it. We're working on that, Joel.
Thank you, Mavilla.
Thank you for your call. This is Community Speaks, 813-239-9663. They go talk to Ron in Mango. Thank you for calling, Ron. You say what?
I say it's a big farce and a waste of our time. There's smoke and mirrors, you know what I mean, all over the place. The politicians are put in place to do certain things, and the government is organized so that certain things work for the people and the government as one. In this particular scenario, there's only one government. And if you have only one government that represents only one person or one thing, that's more like autocracy or communism. And viewed more like the latter because of the actions that take place under communism. Communism is by force. Much like making you take a Bible, and if you don't read it, I'll murder you and kill you. That's by force, whether you accept it or not. So
that
tactic has been used, and that's basically the tactic that's being used now. It's nothing new under the sun. But the people, excuse me, my grandbaby out there trying to beat up on something.
It's all good. Your grandbaby is part of the community too.
Yeah, they depriving them is my concern, and we all have been deprived, and all have sinned and fall short to be called something else, to be called greater than. So that's where we should be starting at. And the problem is we have people that arbitrarily come along and start deciding which box or which category we fit in, and they form that as a formulation now. That's on the macro level. See, it was already there in the first place, but now it's in the open, and they voicing their concerns, their desires, and they're carrying them out. And it's going to hurt a lot of people if it hasn't already done so, and it's always been the case. There's nothing changed. They just, like my father used to say all the time to me, they'll throw a rock and hide their hand. Now they've been just throwing rocks, and they don't care if you see their hand.
Right. That's
really
different.
blatant. That is different. That's a blatant disregard for life, for just everything. And I mean, when you get to that point, that's called toxic. We're at a toxic level, and a lot of people don't know it and aren't concerned. I mean, when I just heard the meat packers went on strike, I said, oh, man, on top of everything else, you see what I'm saying? On top of all this it's not chaos. It's like planned monotony or something. You know, they've been working it so long, the game, the scheme, and everybody's been a part of it because they thought, oh, it's for the betterment of me. I'm doing good. I'm going to be somebody. I's going to be somebody.
Yeah, it's not. You're right. It's not just chaos. It's just simple greed. I mean, these people not just greedy for money, but greedy for power.
Yeah, all of that ought to be recognized. You're going to take the history out so you can replace it with your history to be recognized. I mean, that's a very valid observation and sickness because people want recognition even if they didn't do stuff. That's how a lot of the stuff happened. You know, they stole people's livelihood and everything by thievery. Then they got credit, and it didn't even affect them that they had stolen it. They just stick their chest out and keep walking around and keep doing that same thing. You know, give the Indians. I was thinking about this a while back, and I get off. They come in, and I told the guy this. I was in Mexico, and the guy say, "Hey, come get the vodka." I said, "No drinking. I don't drink liquor." He said, "Well, I got tequila," and I said, "I just told you I don't drink." He kept on. I said, "Look at here. That's how you lost everything." I said, "You sit there and let him give you this liquor, and now you trying to sell it back to me to get your money back." And I left. Boy, And I told somebody else, they said, oh, I know he was mad. I said, probably so, but it's the truth. And that's the same thing, you know. Hasta luego. Bye, little baby. She's only one, and she can say bye. Hey, go, I'm on the phone. Thank you. But yeah, I'm trying to teach him and raise him into the right, not just the stuff that they're telling them, because they've been challenged by their hair. They go to school and their kids tell them, oh, you got ugly hair. And you probably can guess who the kids are. And then I tell them, no, you got the best hair. There's stores. I show them the books, direct them to them, and they say, oh, yeah, I found out. Granddaddy, and then I'm going to leave you with this, just locally on a micro level. This goes for the mayor and everybody. We're all in the same game. If we don't play foul with each other, something's going to go awry, go skewed, is what they say. So I told her, no, I didn't tell her. She came home one day and said, hey, Granddaddy, I found out in school that Caucasian people ate African-American people. I said, oh, my God, they told you that?
Depends on what school you go to, I guess. Hey.
Yeah, but I'm like, I said, you don't want them to learn something good. You tell them some more crazy. So, I don't know, man. I'm just telling you, it's too much. It's too much for human consciousness. All this stuff goes on, unchecked. And our biggest problem is oversight. That's why they took it out. Our biggest issue right now, oversight. Yeah, oversight.
Thank you, Ron. We can talk more. Thank you for that call.
All right. Thank you for the show.
Certainly. 813-239-9663. We could talk about the history of lynchings and especially what happened to Nat Turner in the future show. We could talk a lot about these culture wars under that context. Let's go and talk with Eduardo in Tampa. Want to talk about the mayor and ICE. Thank you, Eduardo. You say what?
Yeah, I wanted to see what you thought about that. I heard that on the news and on television regarding Mr. Allmeyer criticizing Mayor Castor about her cooperation from PD and ICE.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's anti-democratic, and it's just a tactic they keep trying to use to remove elected officials from office. And as soon as you start talking about removing a Republican,
a mayor,
from office, then they go and cry that's anti-democratic, but it's certainly not. If it's them removing a Democrat from office, they really are playing red and blue politics in this state.
You know, I thought when Biden was in president, there's no way they could have forecast this, but anytime your party takes power, DHS was created on 9/11. As soon as Biden got in, I would have flushed that down the toilet, that department. But they don't want to do, neither party wants to do that because they want to have one of their cronies in there. That's why they don't flush that department. But that department should have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have had those issues. But they can't, they don't want it because they want their own people there. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Yeah, but it should have been flushed down the toilet a long time ago.
Right, I guess. Fair play. If it's there, that means it can also be used against the party that put it there for other reasons.
Yeah.
So it's all about the mathematics. It's all about the numbers. You could flush and get rid of a law only if you have the numbers, which is why elections do have consequences.
Yeah, I'm here for the election judge in the 14th, and it's low turnout where I am, so we'll see how it goes the rest of the week in the other polling places.
Oh, yeah. Keep an eye on it for us.
Yep, will do. Okay, have a good week.
You too, Eduardo. Thank you for calling. 813-239-9663, last 6 minutes of the program. Let's go back to Tampa and talk with Greg. You say what, Greg?
Hey, how you doing today? Hopefully well.
Well, yeah.
I have, I tell you what was really great when you made a comparison to what things cost normally people and what they're spending at the Pentagon. Great comparison. It gives people perspective of what they're wasting. But listen, I wanted to be optimistic, and I'll tell you why that is. We've got the No Kings March coming up, and I'll tell you it's the third one.
Yeah.
And it's going to be enormous. I mean, it will send a message that there is safety in numbers, that we all get it, and if anybody downplays it like the Republicans do, there's no having it. So, if you can't get to it, try to find a friend that's going so that they can ride along.
Yeah. It should be happening in multiple cities.
That's right. So, it's again, numbers. It really, really expresses what we're trying to achieve. So, and I think Democrats are going to just wipe out the Republicans in the midterms.
Given what's happening, it should happen that way. You would think it would happen that way, but, politics of late has been very surprising.
$3.99 a gallon is what we're looking at here. So
yeah, that's going to hurt. That's definitely going to hurt.
So, well, anyway, upward and onward. Thanks for your radio show.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you for your optimism.
You're welcome. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Let's go to Largo and speak with Alt. Go ahead. You say what here on Community Speaks?
Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon, almost. Yeah. I just want to give some examples of the deep trouble that Trump is in Iran. For example, today, 6 European countries said they will not be involved with Hormuz. I heard I think it was a tale, they said that the Tomahawks are being depleted, and each one, it costs $4 million, and they're being depleted by Iranian drones that cost, believe it or not, $13,000. And Iran told the U.S. corporations in the Gulf states to evacuate. And they also said that if their oil areas are threatened, that Iran will also threaten the oil in the Gulf states, the oil stations in the Gulf states. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's true. All of those facts are facts. Thank you for that.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you. It was a great show, as always, my Bailey. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Yes, you're welcome.
Well, I think that's my time. Of course, next hour, we're going to get back to the music with It's the Music Monday. You can also continue to write me. I read your emails. You can email DJ at WMNF.org. Continue to communicate in that way. But of course, it's always important to bring the facts to the airways. We got so much disinformation going on, and we could be in a lot of trouble if we don't pay attention to what is happening as threats to your health, as threats to your wealth, your money, your pocketbook, your homes, your children. There's threats all over the place just because some people are more addicted to their power. So we gotta have to keep talking about it here on Community Speaks. Of course, there are so many issues that we have to, bring some. We have to shed light on, and we see that though these politicians are not taking a lot of things seriously. We can talk further about the renewable energies, the regulation of AI data centers. That's going to be a big issue going forward over the summertime, and that's going to be, people are already in the streets, and it's true, this country does not have a king, and so we're going to be covering the third No Kings March, because when you have people rising up, speaking out in numbers, that is empowering. It does put things into perspective. It makes it hard for the ruling class to just depend on fear and chaos. So it takes us not just going to the polls and not being intimidated from the polls, not being intimidated by this agenda and these power-hungry people, but recognizing what power the people still have. So we're going to continue to talk about it. That's why I'm here. We're going to continue to talk about these things. So thank you for joining me here on Community Speaks. Stay tuned as we get back to the music. It's the Music Monday coming your way after we get a news update from The Scoop. Locally produced music news right here at WNF.
Get me down anymore, but it does. Yes, it does. But it does. Yes, it does. If you could seize the war, We could feed the poor. We could do anything we dreamed and even more. We could fly out, vacation in the stars, mess around and build a space station on Mars. But instead, they want you paying back mortgages, trillion-dollar budgets, common sense shortages. Whatever they want, just give them more of it. Giving us advice that will
your
slowly
news,
poison us.
your views, your values. This